Item 3 is policy reform on student fee development, including proposed revisions to A-Board guidelines for class fees and policy 4-101, authority to set tuition and fees. This is the first reading. John Arnold, are you available to join us at the podium or at the table, please? Item 3 relates to approval of proposed revisions to class fee guidelines and review on the first reading proposal revisions to board policy related to tuition and fees. John, give us a little background on this, please.
Thank you, sir. For the last several months, the board has discussed and considered and reviewed our fee policies and chatted through potential changes and updates and improvements to those policies. In mid-January, the Auditor General's Office issued a report on fee setting in the university system, and included in that report were a number of recommendations for ABOR as well as the individual universities. We reviewed those recommendations in light of our prior discussions to determine which ones we could act on quickly and try to incorporate those improvements prior to this year's tuition and fee setting. So while we're not acting today to address all of the Auditor General's recommendations, we are trying to hit a number of them. Because of that, you'll see additional fee setting changes and recommendations in the weeks and months to come. In your packet, there is a table, looks like this, that outlines the 6 recommendations from the Auditor General's Office, the ones that we had tried to address in the forms that we send out to the universities, and the ones that we're addressing today, and then items that we will address later. So, including in the form templates, we added sections where the universities use to request fee changes or new fees. We added sections outlining the purpose and expected benefits to the students from the fee, a delineation of expenditures from revenue, including any administration or administrative or overhead charges, a process followed regarding student input on program and fees and differential tuition, and the context for the proposed fee in relation to other fees or charges that may be also part of the same program. And that was one area the Auditor General really highlighted, is instead of setting fees in isolation, they wanted the board to review, what's the full program of fees that a student might be subject to. So we captured those changes in the form templates. What we're asking the board to do today is to revise Board Policy 4-101, which will better connect state support to resident student in tuition and fee proposals. It clarifies what we're asking the universities to submit to the board as part of their tuition and fee proposals. And then 2, it clarifies that all non-user fees are required to be submitted for ABOR approval. Our current policies define 3 types of fees: a mandatory fee, a program fee, and a class fee. Then, of course, there's user fees, which are not expected to come to the board. The Auditor General identified sort of an other category of fees, that there's some fees out there that don't fit into these 3 defined categories of fees. I think the reforms that we'll bring back to you in the future will include clearer definitions of these types of fees and to establish a clear definition of an other fee. What we're doing today is just sort of plugging that hole and saying, if it isn't a user fee, it's got to come to the board. And that's just a blanket statement, so that's clear. The other thing we're clarifying today is that class fees can be subject to an administrative charge. Some of the universities do levy an administrative charge on class fees at this time. The Auditor General noted that that is not one of the listed uses of a class fee, and so we're adding that administrative charge to the approved list of uses for class fees. Future reforms we expect to do provide a clear definition of allowable fees and charges in board policy, establishing a fee review or sunset process, clarifying the student input requirements around fees, increasing transparency in the fee development process, developing a summary guide for students detailing the fee setting process and identifying key contact personnel, and trying to improve transparency and simplicity. So that's a quick review of what we're doing today on fees. I would point out the two more things. One, the revisions to the policy are a first read today, so that'll come back to you in April, but we do anticipate that the universities will follow that guideline in their fee submittals. And then two, the guideline we're changing today will take effect today. That only requires the board to review it once. In the policy change 4-101, in the document you have strikes D6, which this is part of what the universities submit to ABOR, is the revenues required to service bonded indebtedness. We had taken that out. We have had a request from the universities to leave that in place. It's part of their covenants when they issue debt, that the board will review the amount that's required to service that debt. And so when we bring that back for the final read, we will have that unstruck so that'll remain in the policy.
Questions for Mr. Arnold? Comments, anyone? President Crow.
I have a general comment relative to fees and the contextualization of this, particularly for newer regents and others that might be listening. First, I think these recommendations are good. I think that they will improve and enhance a number of aspects related to fees and fee structures and so forth. But I want to make sure that people remember not to be shocked by large numbers. If someone said, for instance, that ASU had thousands of fees, which is the case, if you count our classes, some people think that's a large number. It's not. We have 75,000 students pursuing degrees across 75,000 students, give or take, pursuing about 400 degrees on campus. We have 30,000 students pursuing 150 or so degrees online. So for the sake of argument, imagine 105,000 individuals, some studying aviation and becoming jet pilots, some studying journalism and doing everything that's necessary there, across hundreds of degree program manifestations, engaged in at least 20,000 separate individual courses. And so the fact that there are some fees on some courses and not on most courses, and that there are special program fees associated with, let's say, a journalism major, we'd rather not charge every other student for the thousands of dollars of camera equipment that journalism students need access to. We'd rather not charge, in general, the general student body to train someone to become a jet pilot, which is one of the programs that we have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these things. The level of scale here means nothing. So the fact that there's lots of fees, who cares? They are fees that are a part of us trying to find a way to be fair and equitable to all students, while also creating the educational environment for an individual student to pursue. Now, should we be transparent? Yes. Should we be more transparent? Always. Should we make sure that the fees are appropriately used? Yes. Should we do all of the things that are being talked about? Absolutely. And I think in general that was the finding of the Auditor General. There are no material transgressions of the kind that requires us to do massive policy shifts or something like that. There's making it better, improving, and so forth, which I'm all for. But I just wanted to make sure that people understand, that folks understand the complexity. We're running an institution where to produce a nurse, an in-state student resident nurse, costs 3 times the tuition. How do we do that? How do we find the resources to do that? So all discussions about fees, all discussions about tuition, all discussions about limiting fees, limiting tuition, limiting this, limiting that, those are only discussions about please find a way to carry on with fewer resources. Please find a way to carry on with fewer degrees, fewer resources, fewer programs, fewer means to actually do these things. And so the reason for this complexity, and an institution of, at least of our scale, speaking only for ASU, the reason for this complexity class fees, this fee, program fee, differential tuition, and so forth and so on, is a function of quality of a particular program and fairness to other students. Now, we could aggregate all of this into a single number, like a simple institution that has 70 or 80 degree programs, largely built around a core curriculum. Very simple. I'm familiar with the way that all works, and I just have one number. That's your tuition. There is no fee. And in the scale of our institution, that would be grossly unfair. And so there is a fairness element to this that needs to be appropriately and judiciously implemented. But I just wanted to make sure that the fees are not some tricky way for the universities to acquire more money. They're not some obfuscation of the facts. They're not some ability or desire to be not transparent. And then I'll make one other comment relative to the engagement of students. Students should be involved in and transparently familiar with everything that we're doing. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. I don't want to be put in a position of negotiating fees for the JET pilot program, who the person would say, well, I'd really like to pay $15,000 for this JET training program rather than the $35,000 that you're charging me, because I don't really have $35,000 and I don't think it should cost $35,000. And we're like, okay, this is what it costs. and so there is also another thing here which goes to the notion of our relative cost. And so our relative costs in all of the programs that we have for an in-state student are the lowest cost that an in-state student could find for a comparable program anywhere on the planet. There is no comparable cost structure for an in-state student at the cost structure, including fees, including differential tuition, including tuition. There's no other place you can go. This is a fantastically well-costed, well-structured, financially organized set of fees and so forth to be able to keep the cost as low as possible but still deliver the quality. And so yes, students should be a part of the process, intimately aware of the process, fully aware of what the fees produce, what they pay for, and so forth and so on. But we still have to deliver the program. And so this is just a really important thing I think I want to get on the table relative to complexity of all of this and purpose and this notion of equitable and fair treatment.
Any other comments? Thank you, Dr. Crow. Any other comments? Regent Penley.
Thank you, Regent Schupman. I just want to thank you, John, and the staff and President Cloyne for moving so swiftly to begin to address some issues that were raised by the Auditor General's staff with regard to our fees. I think President Crow makes a very valid statement that for the most part, we are not seeing major problems. We do need more transparency. We need to ensure that the money that is collected is spent for the specific purpose that it was collected for. We need to ensure where appropriate, student engagement occurs. I also agree with President Crow. There are certainly many issues where that kind of engagement really does not serve a good issue, because if we're charging for beakers and bottles in a chemistry lab, that's the price of those. I think it is admirable to use fees where prices or where expenses are higher. This is inappropriate. It's consistent with the capitalistic economic system that we have. So I endorse exactly what President Crow is saying about that. But I thank you, John, for your work and others over a short period of time to bring to us rather swiftly a better approach to fee structure. And I know there's more policy we need to look at down the road, and I anticipate that we'll get to that as well. So thank you.
And Regent Schupman, if I may, just to clarify, the Auditor General's report generally found that the university system was doing a good job in fee setting and in the use of those fees generally followed best practices. The recommendations are largely just cleanup items that each institution, including ABOR, needs to do. So we were generally pleased with the outcome of the audit and are grateful for your support moving forward to clean that up.
It's a source of pride for all of us that our three institutions strive to be the most effective they can be, to be the most efficient they can be, and to be as fair as they can be, and this is part of that. There also is a requirement for us to be as transparent and to make sure that our processes are as supportive and as appropriate for student access, for general public access, for everybody to understand what we're doing. This is a good demonstration of the value of audits. Audits shouldn't be viewed as somebody coming in to try to catch you to do something wrong. They come in to help you do what you're trying to do even better. And the quick response that we have come forward with, the data you've brought forward, John, is entirely appropriate, and we thank you for that, you and President Klein, for that work. Any other comments? Hearing none, I move that the board approves the proposed revisions to ABOR guidelines for class fees and review on the first reading the proposed revisions to policy 4-101, authority to set tuition and fees as prescribed in the executive summary. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the business and finance agenda.
Thank you, and thank you, John. So we're going to, the next item was the legislative update, but we're going to move that to tomorrow morning at 9:30 before ASU's OFR presentation at the Fulton Center. So the next items that we have are items 5 and 6. I'd like to invite Nancy Krasinski. Could you, by next meeting, change your name? I can help you with that.
I can take that under advisement.
So for our first item, the board is asked to review on first reading proposed revisions to ABOR policies 6, 9, 10, and 6, 1001, and the proposed repeal of 6, 1002 and 1003, and the ABOR guidelines for communications with the board regarding multiple year coaching contracts. So Nancy, please proceed.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, as you can tell from even trying to read the title of this item, the board has had a number of policies that relate to coaching contracts and contracts for athletic directors. And so if only to make the title shorter, what my recommendation is that we consolidate those policies and guidelines into a single place, a single policy, and at the December meeting, you instructed me to bring something back for the board to review. So this item is here on first reading, no vote on this one today. It consolidates 4 policies and a set of board guidelines into a single policy. I will say the universities have done a great job navigating all this multiple direction, but it's been hard for the public and the media to know that they have to look in 4 or 5 places to find out what the board guidance is. And also keeping with the theme of history that President Klein and President Crow mentioned earlier, the board in its reform efforts has been moving away from having policies that list specific contract provisions word for word that need to be included in contracts to a more governance perspective where you provide parameters that then the university presidents are accountable for meeting. Particularly in the area of coaching contracts, in social media, things move very quickly. The presidents don't have the flexibility they need when the board prescribes specific language. And on the other hand, the board doesn't get the benefit of allowing the universities to take advantage of what new approaches there may be out there. It lets them take advantage of best practices. If you include specific language, the tendency is to just include that specific language and not really be thinking about how it might be able to be done better. So with that, I presented the proposed policy revision for your review and would entertain any questions, and we'll take any comments I get into account and bring it back for a vote in April.
So my first question is, given all the media inquiries as to the recent coaches changes and buyout provisions and all that, where could you kind of go through the major changes in the policies?
Happy to. So it's not so much that there are changes as that we've consolidated all the requirements in one place. So if there are any clawback provisions, presidents need to report to you on there. Any offset or mitigation, the presidents need to report back to you on how they're handling that in each contract. It's part of the disclosure requirement of the presidents to the board. Any early termination provisions, which might include a buyout, those have to come to you, and the process, the communications process that was previously outlined in a guideline is now in the policy, and that is that the presidents work directly with the board chair and the board president, because again, as these develop really quickly in real time, to keep you apprised on where they are on these various elements, what the contract term is going to be, what the salary is there a buyout from the previous provision, from the previous position, what kind of contract terms are being negotiated. So you have a chance, if you don't like what you're hearing at that level, to get information about that and work with the presidents and understand why sometimes they may have to, in a difficult negotiation, why there may be compromises, or send them back and ask them to see if they can push harder on certain points at the insistence of the board. One of the problems with these contracts, as you well know, is that the presidents have the authority to make an offer subject to board approval of the contract terms. And so it just creates some tension in the system that they are out doing the negotiation. They know they have to return back to the board for approval of those contract terms.
Any other questions or comments from the regents? This must have been a very good report. So this item is for first reading and will be brought back to the board in April for approval. So our next item, the board is asked to review on first reading and approve for immediate implementation proposed revisions to ABOR policies 5-302, 5-303, and 5-308 concerning codes of conduct. So Nancy?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you. Under Arizona law, the board is authorized to adopt rules for the maintenance of public order on its campuses. It has broad authority to adopt administrative rules, which we have come to know as the codes of conduct. You have two codes of conduct. One is just called the Code of Conduct that applies to anyone who comes on campus, members of the public, employees. A student code of conduct applies just to students. It has sanctions like suspension and expulsion from the university that would apply only to students. Both of those policies have definitions of weapons and prohibitions against carrying weapons on campus. This policy will clarify that commonly available over-the-counter chemical repellents, the pepper spray, not bear spray, but pepper spray that people use for personal self-defense against other people, and alarms. There was some confusion as to whether or not those were permitted on campus. The reason this is here for immediate implementation is that we want to make it very clear that those are not prohibited in policy. We have some other things that we're adding to the definition of weapon. Dangerous instrument, torches, devices with open flame. Frankly, that's a response to some of the protests around the country, and we just want to be very explicit. That was probably already prohibited by the policy, but we're being very explicit. There have been a lot of conversations in that regard about free speech, and I would just point out on page 7 of the item, under jurisdiction and authority, there's a specific statement that nothing in this policy is intended to prohibit protected speech. Symbolic speech, anything that's protected, but something that would endanger people like carrying a torch on campus is not something that we have to protect.
So, are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay, I move that the board approve for immediate implementation the proposed revisions to ABOR policies 5-302, 5-303, and 5-308 concerning codes of conduct as presented in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
So next, the board is asked to approve the multi-year employment contract for Michael Marlowe as Vice President for Intercollegiate Athletics at Northern Arizona University. And I had the chance to meet Michael, or Mike, with President Chang last week. I think this is a wonderful addition to NAU. I was very impressed. Michael's only been at a couple of institutions. He said he doesn't move unless there's a very good purpose or reason for moving. He thought Northern Arizona would be a perfect fit, and he's very excited about the opportunities. So, President Chang.
Chairman Ridenhour and Regents, NAU competes in the Division I sports very competitively, and we have back-to-back championships across country and many championships in the Big Sky Conference of Division I. We are a non-bowl FCS football, which is the only distinction from our sister institutions. We are considered a non-power 5 conference. When we opened up our athletic director position, we received an overwhelming amount of attention to this position because of who we are, the success that we've had in our sports, and the potential that we have to elevate athletics. And so out of that pack, Mike Marlowe rose to the top, and I'm going to ask him to give a little bit of his background for the other members of the board and provide some opportunity for some questions of Mike. So take it on, Mike.
All right, thank you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here before you today. As previously mentioned, I'm thrilled to be at Northern Arizona University. It's something, frankly, that has been a community and institution that my wife and I have looked at fondly for many years. I spent the past 7.5 years at Washington State University. Prior to that, I was at the University of Oregon for 12 years. Working with my very good friend and colleague, Dave Hickey, the athletic director at the University of Arizona. And I got my start in the Big Sky Conference at the University of Montana in the early 90s, and then went to the University of Idaho from there. There were several things beyond the community that attracted me to NAU, the demonstrated collaboration with campus and athletics, and frankly, President Chang's belief that athletics can play a very important role in elevating the overall brand of the institution. So I felt like I was in alignment philosophically from a community perspective, and certainly a belief that we can do greater things in athletics at NAU.
I'm sorry. I was conferring. I want to make sure that Dave Hickey confirms that you're a very good friend.
Well, yeah, thank you. That's my perspective. Dave may have another one, yes.
So thank you very much. Any questions or comments from any members of the Board of Regents? Regent Madsen.
Frowns. So I have a couple of quick questions, and these are similar to questions I have asked about other contracts in terms of academic performance incentives. And I don't actually know if you know the answers to these or if other people need to answer them. But I'm curious, based on the GPA and the APR goals, where the current, what the current status is. So are these, is the GPA 3.0 to 3.2 a reach? Is it already there? Same thing with the APR.
I could address this because we structured the contract to have a competitive nature to it, but also a stretch nature. We set the base salary as low as we could negotiate, so that if there would be something that occurs over the next 5 years, that we have an opportunity to mitigate the risk to the institution. But we also wanted to provide an ability for the athletic director and the president to have their eyes on the same goals. With the slippage, the department CUME GPA would slip under 3.0. It's slightly above 3.0, but it certainly isn't at 3.2 or 3.5. The same holds true with the APR. Our APR is around, I can't tell you exactly, but it's within that 1 week range. but not in the 2 or 3 without some effort on the part of the athletic director to move this institution along. I did not want to structure something that would penalize a new person if they kept the momentum that currently existed in their first 6 to 12 months, but wanted to make sure that we were all under the same focus and goals to improve in these 2 areas.
Okay, so the slippage you're talking about is graduating seniors who have good GPAs, is that?
This is all of the students,
Right.
of the 400 student athletes that we have. It's their cumulative GPA, freshman to senior.
Okay, but you're saying that with the slippage, it would be right about the 3.0?
The APR is both a year and a multi-year calculation that the NCAA provides.
So, 2 items. You want to comment on any mitigation clauses that may be in the contract, because that's always an interest. And then after you do that, I'm going to ask Michael if he'd comment on, his family and some more of, what do you like to do? What are your, I'm not going to say if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be, but give us something personal that we can go on. So first, President Chang.
We did put in language for mitigation and worked with Nancy on that. Two sections that are important. One would be that we've agreed that if Mike should leave, that he would be responsible for 50% of the salary moving forward. So we negotiated a 5-year contract because of the industry standard, but after the first year, there would be not a 4-year expectation that he would return, but he would return 2 of that. The same would happen if we would break the contract, that there would be some opportunity for a payout for Mike, but not the full salary, just half of that, and of course not the incentives. So we tried to keep the salary low and reduce the risk, but we expect that there will be a renewal on this contract, not a termination of it.
Okay, now that we have that out of the way, tell us something about you.
Well, if I were a tree, I'd be a ponderosa pine. I have 3 children, ages 21, 17, and 16. My oldest is a junior at Oregon State University. My other 2 are still in high school. My wife and I have recently celebrated 25 years of marriage. We met in college. We're college sweethearts. And college athletics, those that are in it, those who are around it, know that it's a lifestyle. So between games and contests and student activities, as well as that of our children, that's kind of our life. And as a family, we love it. We do it together. They're present. They get to know the student athletes, and as well as the rest of the staff. So I've said it when I was introduced by the president, and I'd say it again, my wife will prove to be a very good friend raiser for NAU athletics in the university.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Mike has also purchased a home in Flagstaff, so that's exciting for us as well.
Yes, I'm living on campus now, which has been great. I live on campus. I'm living on campus.
As long as you want to.
Although the students do look at me and wonder if I'm with the Dean of Students office or if I've got my eye on them. So that's been a lot of fun.
Student returning to,
That's right, non-traditional, right.
Okay, I move that the board approve the multiple-year employment contract for Michael Marlowe as Vice President for Intercollegiate Athletics at Northern Arizona University as presented in the executive summary. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, the board is asked to approve the multiple-year employment contract for Kevin Sumlin as head football coach at the University of Arizona. And so, President Robbins, I'm not sure whether Dave Hickey or President Robbins or a combination of both is going to present.
Well, Dave's going to confirm whether he can support the new athletic director at Northern Avenue.
Right, that's the first thing. As an attorney, I'm going to ask you all kinds of questions about Michael Marlowe and what he did when you were there. And so is everything good?
Everything's good.
Okay.
No, congratulations to NAU. Outstanding person, a great professional. And he really is. I think he is a ponderosa pine. You found a really strong individual to lead the athletics program, be a tremendous member of the community, and he is a great friend of mine as well. So
Thank you.
I'm proud to count him as a great friend.
So, Coach Sumlin.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and to visit with you and review our request to a multi-year contract for our new head football coach, Kevin Sumlin. We are seeking approval of that. You have materials, I believe, in front of you. The executive summary of that. We're seeking a 5-year contract. We have an individual with over 30 years of experience and background in college football, a former player himself at the college level at Purdue University. So an outstanding individual with an abundance of experience. 2-time head coach, once at the University of Houston, one at Texas A&M, and then a number of assistant positions across the country. Really an excellent recruiter, an outstanding coach, really shares the vision we have, and Dr. Robbins has, of our university, our values of where we want to go. He's committed to the academic performance of our student athletes, our football players. Bring a strong and very confident leadership style. It's really a new, exciting era for our football program. We have done our due diligence through the search. We are certainly not aware of any issues that would negatively impact or affect his employment here at the University of Arizona, so we're very pleased with that. What we're proposing again is a 5-year contract that would end in 2023. And with an annual salary of $2 million for the first 2 years, years 3 through 5 increasing to $3.5 million. That's a combination of peripheral duties and base salary. And so all of those revenues, all of those dollars will be generated through the athletics department, through the revenues that we generate. There's a number of annual performance incentives. I might just touch on, because of the earlier question, we have detailed in there our academic bonuses. Where we currently stand. Again, these are competitive. These are part of the market. Certainly we want to reward our coaches, inspire our coaches to move our students towards successful academic careers while they're here. As athletic directors, as coaches, that's part of our role. But we have what we would term stretch or aspirational goals. We think we can attain those, and we think that's what we should be driving for in both our APR and our GPA in that. So let's see here. We'll just we have, obviously we've worked very hard with termination, for cause, without cause, mitigation included there. It's very clear on the head coach and how he could terminate the contract. So we feel we're in a much stronger position than we may have been in the past. We've looked at that very, very closely with our general counsel and received other input on that. We currently do not have there was no other buyout for Coach Sumlin, so we're not providing any other resources to a previous contract or a previous employment agreement that we had to assist in buying him out. So again, we're here today to ask for your approval of this multi-year agreement for the new head football coach. As I said, it's a really exciting time. It's a new era of Arizona football. There's a lot of energy around the program right now. There's energy and enthusiasm around our university, our alums, our fan base. You can just really feel that. This is something that's garnered great national attention for our university and the football program, from the media, from experts in the game of football around the nation. And we feel it will just be a tremendous hire going forward, an opportunity for our university to shine and to be a program, a point of pride for our entire university. So with that, I'll pause and thank you for the opportunity to present this to you. And
So thank you. I'd like to acknowledge Laura Todd Johnson. You did a very good job in helping him present. So,
Thank you.
I'd like President Robbins, though, to comment because there have been all this questions at the University of Arizona, about the athletics and athletic department, and so. How do you feel about this hire?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
did he come along with following him? Football coach followed you from Houston?
Yeah, we worked all that out ahead of time. We had to stage it a little bit, but yes. We're bringing others from Texas too.
I know you're very much involved in athletics. You love athletics.
I do, but I'm trying to get less involved so that Dave can, he can rest easier, that I'm not as involved. So, but I really admire Dave for going out and finding Coach Sumlin. I was concerned that he may not want to come to the university. He may, because there was all kind of stories that given. He had a winning season every year, and given the circumstances surrounding what went on in College Station, I think we got an incredible deal. The concern was, of course, he was going to take a year off and just kind of regroup and recharge. And all of my friends from Texas A&M who are friends with Coach Sumlin and big supporters of his keep calling and saying that every time they talk to him, they've not seen him as excited as he is now. And I really do think it's an incredible fit for what we want to accomplish, the kind of culture. The thing that I love about him is both his mother and his father were educators. And he talked about he couldn't go out and play ball until he got his studies done every day. And I think if you look at his track record at A&M, it was very good in terms of academic achievement, and certainly we emphasize that. But most importantly, I think he's going to change the culture of the program. I made a comment that I'd been to many A&M games and watched a lot of them on TV, and I've never seen him act disrespectfully on the sideline. And of course, that guy sent me some Twitter of Kevin on the sideline, but it was almost like Fred Fox and Elizabeth. I'm coming. He was just. It was funny. It wasn't that he was vile and he was swearing, and it was just kind of funny. So I thought that's the best they can do. We're in good shape, and I think, of course, we want to win a national championship in every sport we play. The chairman and I were reviewing how we did in terms of signing day, and President Crow and his new hire finished 5th in the Pac-12 and 40th overall in the nation, and we finished 11th and 58th overall. So we got some work to do, and Coach Sumlin is clearly aware of that. The day he started, he was on the phone out hustling. So at the end of the day, the most important thing is that he returns a positive, and I mean this in every sense of the word, positive culture to the football program, and he's really going to be invested in winning on the field, of course, but more importantly, helping our young men become adults. As we say, 98% of them will do something else besides play football in their life, and I really believe we got the right guy for us at the right time.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Regent Penley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dave, as we all know, the Southeastern Conference has really bid these contracts up enormously, which represents a real problem for the rest of us across the country. But within the Pac-12, could you comment on the particular bonuses associated with winning certain championships and others as to where the University of Arizona is relative to the rest of the Pac-12 schools?
Sure. Wouldn't know exactly what we rank on that. We're competitive in that arena. I would say we were in the mid to low level of those bonuses, and certainly when you compare that nationally or to the SEC, we would be in a different spectrum. We want
Substantially lower, I assume.
substantially lower, yes, the lower spectrum.
And that was the point about raising the SEC.
I think we've been very competitive. I think this contract, again, from a base salary or compensation piece, places us in the lower, I guess you would say the lower half, but it's a contract that's been fair, that has been, I don't like to use the word lower, I think it's a very competitive and good contract, one that both parties agree to and feel very, very confident about it. And again, we feel good about where we are and where we landed. There is pressure, there's no doubt, in intercollegiate athletics, there is pressure on head coaches' salaries, something that we work very hard as administrators to try to mitigate that the best we can, and also protect the universities if things don't go the direction that we all hope. And so we think we've done that. So.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes, I have more of a comment, I think, or a question maybe. Laura, as you know, this board and the universities have come under attack recently for some of the previous contracts and mitigation provisions that weren't as robust as we'd like to see, but I think you got it here. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the mitigation provisions.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Regent Taylor Robeson, thank you for the opportunity. In keeping with Nancy Tribbency's earlier presentation, we were very mindful of where this board wanted to go in terms of consolidating the policies and putting the guidelines into policy itself. So we were mindful of that as we ensured that mitigation provisions were present. And so as set out in the executive summary, we made sure, and Dave sort of bringing it home with the negotiations, that should Coach Sumlin decide to terminate the relationship, that in fact he would have a duty to mitigate that and to provide compensation to the university to end that contract. Likewise, with respect to the university terminating without cause, should we choose to do that, then Coach Sumlin has a duty to offset. So should he secure other employment after ending with us, and we hope that doesn't happen. This is all, we lawyers are here to envision what might happen, and we hope that it doesn't turn out that way. But if that were to happen and Coach Sumlin were to take some sort of employment as a professional major league team advisor or coach, or in the television capacity, then he'd have a duty to offset the mitigation aspect. So that's something that was important to us and we made sure was present.
Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments? So I move that the board approve the multiple year employment contract for Kevin Sumlin as head football coach at the University of Arizona as presented in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the next item, so we'll move from U of A to ASU. Next item is the one-year extension, excuse me, of the multi-year employment contract for Robert Hurley as head men's basketball coach at Arizona State University. And President Crow, would you like to present?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just let me make a comment about coaching and coaching hires. So unlike a professional sports team, which has the really dramatically complicated task of running one team and one sport, we run 24 teams and 24 sports and all of the complexities that they represent. And so 3 years ago when we hired Vice President Ray Anderson as University Vice President for Athletics and Director of Intercollegiate Athletics, we set a standard for our coaches and a model for our moving forward that is consistent with what I'm about to say relative to Coach Hurley, but I want to give just a little bit of context. Along the way, I made the determination that our athletic director must have been, and Ray Anderson represents this, a successful collegiate athlete themselves. They must have demonstrated scholarly capability themselves. They must epitomize with their own life and behavior as a college student what we want our college athletes to do and to be, and then to have gone on and done great things. And so Ray Anderson himself, I'm giving this as the context, was a two-sport varsity athlete, graduate of Stanford University in 1979, graduate of Harvard Law School, as a classmate of Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, went on to successfully launch his own business, join a law firm, launch his own enterprise, and ultimately become the executive vice president of the NFL, where we hired him from that position. Then, in hiring new coaches, of which he has hired many, the objective was the same: to find great scholar athletes who have a demonstrated career of success as a scholar athlete in college, and then, as well as that, then ultimately very successful as a coach. So he has hired a women's golf coach, already has won the national championship. He hired a new wrestling coach. By the way, our women's golf coach was an NCAA champion as an athlete, an NCAA champion as an assistant coach, and now an NCAA champion as a head coach, beating Stanford and Northwestern in the finals last year. Ray was able to hire a wrestling coach, Zeke Jones, who was a world champion wrestler, an NCAA champion, the former coach at the University of Pennsylvania, and at the time that we hired him, the sitting Olympic coach. Since his hiring, we have returned our wrestling program to competitive status with the Pac-12 championship won last year. We're now ranked 8th among all teams wrestling this year. We recently beat Stanford in a dual match, which we had not done for so long that people can't remember. We hired the Olympic swimming coach, Mr. Bowman, Bob Bowman, and now nearly all of our coaches are gold medalists from the Olympics. We're now ranked 10th in swimming. We hired the Olympic women's triathlon coach, Mr. English. We have won the 2 national championships in that sport's not yet an NCAA sport, but it will be, and they are still competing. We won the national championship in the first 2 years. We have a new women's gymnastics coach. We're now competing at the 17th position, moving up in the rankings. And in men's basketball, Ray made an unusual hiring a coach with very little experience as a coach, but who had a demonstrated track record as an athlete, Bobby Hurley. He was an All-American at Duke, graduated from Duke, was an unexpected professional basketball player until injured in a car accident, left sports completely, came back to coaching after decades of not being involved, or a long period not being involved in sports, assistant coach, and then had been a head coach at a not a well-known basketball power called the State University of New York at Buffalo, who in his second year as the coach of that team was able to take them for the first time to the NCAA tournament. He has been our coach now and has demonstrated and achieved the transition that we hoped that he would achieve, which was to return our basketball program to a level of significant competitiveness. He has done that. Our program is competitive. To recruit fantastic athletes, he is doing that. To hold our athletes to a standard of achievement. And in the spirit of the design of our coaching hires, they work like this. You need to get about the program that we're attempting to achieve, to become as competitive as possible with scholar athletes that graduate, or you're going to be replaced. And so when we find a coach that we want to keep, which is the case for Mr. Hurley, we then want to make a contract adjustment. And this is a contract adjustment now reflective of the fact that we believe that the choice that was made by Ray Anderson has proven to be a very good choice, and we are looking now for a long-term relationship with this coach as a program builder. What we're interested in now is building something we've never had at ASU before, a consistent, ongoing, multi-decadal, competitive basketball program. We believe we have the coach to do this, and this coach reflects our value system, reflects our goals and our objectives, brings a unique kind of approach to things. Just recruited a 5-star basketball player, which we haven't done since a person that you've probably heard about named Mr. Harden, who's been doing very well on his own in professional basketball. And I talked to Mr. Harden just a few days ago, had a very good conversation with him. We're proposing now to take Coach Hurley to what we call a positional contract, where we are looking to take his salary to a higher level to achieve some momentum here for the building of a program over a very long period of time. And Ray Anderson, who has spent his entire life finding, acquiring, and advancing athletic talent, has once again in this case I think found us a great basketball coach, and we're moving from the sort of startup contract to this contract. This contract is also reflective of something that newer regents might not know, which is a policy decision by ASU to not pretend that we are an institution which will pay anything to win. We won't pay anything to win. We believe that there are limits, and so we pursue mid-range contracts with very large incentives. That is sort of our operating style, our operating objective. How can we have salaries sort of in the mid-range, and then nationally, and then have very high incentives for performance, and that's the basic structure of our approach to things. I'll just add one other comment, not related to basketball, but related to the media. We don't pay much attention to the media. If we paid attention to the media, we would fire every coach every time that someone said something bad about our performance, which is constant. There's a constant drumbeat. There's a constant flow of information. The media in general have not taken the time to understand the changes in our academic performance, the changes in our athletic performance, the changes across our programs, the fact that we're graduating almost all of our athletes, the fact that we didn't used to graduate any of our athletes. And so we have a completely transformed scholar-athlete athletic department operating right now. And on all programs, we're hiring coaches that can help us to fulfill that objective. Coach Hurley is one of those coaches, is deeply committed to the success of his students, both academically and athletically. And we're here for a contract adjustment for him.
So thank you, Regent Krishna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. President Crow, there's some rumors that Coach Hurley might leave and go somewhere else. Is it true?
Well, the Coach Hurley has demonstrated to anyone observing him that he is a national class coach. Therefore, lots of people will be interested in him. And when you approve this, they won't be.
Well, there you have it.
I like that answer.
Any other comments and questions? Could you just go over, the major any mitigation clauses?
There are mitigation clauses. We have listened to the board. We have a substantial penalty for early departure. We have this is a complicated contract because we're trying to make certain that Coach Hurley digs in here at ASU and becomes our what we would call the coach of record, sort of a John Wooden, the coach that comes and stays for years and years and years and builds a program and makes things happen. And so this is a contract that does have mitigation clauses, does have a salary adjustment, does have a signing bonus for the new contract, which is reflective of his unusually positive performance. That is performance at the highest level that we've competed at for a long time this year. Not unusual for him, but unusual for ASU. And so there's those elements all wrapped into this. We're bringing this to you now. We've obviously been focused on this for some time. We're running the coach's performance is running about a year ahead of what our expectations were for him. And so we're very excited that things are moving on an accelerated basis. We're very excited about the recruiting. I think this contract reflects, and regents have had a chance to look at it, reflects all of the concerns that we've heard from various regents, and is also, just so regents can have some understanding of this, is also reflective of the reality of the marketplace that we live in. And these are not abstract contracts focused on a single individual who's going to work in some area of our nanotechnology physics lab. This is a national class basketball coach operating in high visibility across the entire country twice per week in public show and tells of how he works. This contract is reflective of those realities, our internal expectations, and some of the concerns that regents have had.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So I move that the board approve a one-year extension of the multiple-year employment contract for Robert Hurley as head men's basketball coach at Arizona State University as presented in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So you're up again, Dr. Crowe. Next, the board is asked to approve a one-year extension of the multiple-year employment contract for Charlie Turner as head women's basketball coach at Arizona State University.
So Charlie Turner Thorne is and epitomizes in every way everything that I just stated. Student athlete, Stanford undergraduate, very successful athlete, has grown from her coaching career at NAU, ultimately coming to ASU, been here almost 20 years, I think 18 years. She's been to the tournament, the NCAA tournament, 17 of those 18 years. She is the program building coach. She is the national star coach. She is the person that has made our program one of the nationally most competitive programs. Her women are unbelievable student athletes with 100% graduation rate and unbelievable life outcomes. And so it's a program that we're very proud of, and a coach that we're very proud of. And she sets a standard by which those of us in the rest of the university say, this is what our coaches need to be. This is how our coaches, what they need to deliver. And she delivers it year after year after year after year. Last year, if you watch the NCAA tournament games, we ultimately lost along the way, sort of in the middle of the tournament, to the University of South Carolina, who won the tournament last year. We lost to them in a hard-fought, close, battle of titans. It was just unbelievable to watch. And so we're very proud of Coach Turner Thorne and her team. They've played around the world. They've represented both the university and the conference really well. And we want to make sure that we are recognizing her performance and making sure that she knows that we are committed to her as our institution building coach. That is what she has really been able to achieve.
Any comments or questions from the board? Regent Beck.
So I had a chance to talk with Christine last night regarding this, and wanted to make one revision. I think it clarifies the salary situation relative to the performance incentives that are noted in the salary increase performance criteria regarding the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four. And rather than stating what the specific base salary should be each year, I think the change was that we wanted to make that it shall increase annually $25,000 on July 1, 2018 through July 1, 2021, because we ended up actually not giving her any sort of bonus if she achieved a performance criteria. It took her right to the same place where her new base salary was, so there was no additional money involved. So that clarification was made. And I just wanted to say, I think, I also asked about the number of students that were in the Barrett Honors College, just based on the performance criteria incentives. And there are currently 1 or 2 students that are in the Barrett Honors College, but the difference is that Coach Turner Thorne has never had these kind of incentive payments built into her contract. So the students that are there are actually the result of her work and her recruiting. So I don't have an issue with rewarding her for that particular achievement.
And those, all of those comments and earlier comments that we have received from Regent Manson have been very helpful in sort of tightening and clarifying and making more precise some elements of our contract. So those are well taken. I will say, on the Barrett Honors College, I don't remember the exact number, but I think we have around 70 of our student athletes now, maybe 80, that are students in the Barrett Honors College, and that would be up by 80.
And that's out of about, what, out of about 400?
Yeah, right, 500.
500?
Yeah, but it's up by about 80.
That's good.
Any other comments or questions? So, with that clarification, I will move that the board approve a one-year extension of the multiple-year employment contract for Charlie Turner as head women's basketball coach at Arizona State University as presented in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Crowe.
Thank you.
So next, we have our student regent report. So Regent Carriega.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we can get the presentation up on the screen.
Oh, I love the slides. So I always comment because Lynn Nadal will be next, and he probably doesn't have slides.
It's an opportunity to let the students shine.
Okay.
Correct?
Thank you.
Don't want to get in their way.
If you could just give us a moment.
Is it just one slide?
No. It's. If not, we could ad-lib it. We could do it.
Spider chart.
I was having trouble
Is that
getting
your
on
spider chart?
the, I wish.
Oh, no.
The interwebs.
Channel Rick was.
So the weather's nice today. It's been a good day so far. So thank you, Dr. Crow, for the hospitality here.
Is that what's called a fill-in?
Yeah, I guess you could call this a fill-in.
Fourth lowest rainfall in history this winter.
Yeah, it's very bad.
Good weather, but keep your eye on it.
No snow in play?
Things that
there's
will
none.
burn this summer.
And it's
So
gonna-
some of
when
the
it's-
legislators
when it's
last
60
night, this
degrees.
is an additional fill-in, were concerned about water and what's going to happen with, the snowpack and the fire season and all of that because of what's out. I saw something about an ASU professor. There's no correlation between if you have a really warm winter that we're going to be 135 degrees in the summer.
It'd actually be likely to be the opposite. But
Yeah, typically is a little bit.
Perfect.
Phoenix is just going to have the same temperature all year long then?
In Flagstaff, we can wear shorts now, but we'll put sweatshirts on in the summer.
All right, so
Oh,
we
here it is.
filled in long
Drum
enough
roll. You click,
to
you
bail
click. Go
out
ahead.
our student regent report.
All right, then. Well, thank you for helping fill in. So this is our February Student Regent Report. And so I'm going to hand it off to Regent Degervin to begin.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so to begin off the Student Regent Report, we're going to discuss the topping off ceremony and the regents. We can't just claim that Regent Carrier and I were there. Had a wonderful opportunity to sign the beam that will forever be placed in the new U of A Health Sciences Innovation Building. It was lifted really high into the air, literally above our heads, and it was placed in the structure where it will forever be. And it was wonderful to see the progress of the building, not only because it furthers the mission of the university, but because it will provide a state-of-the-art education for the students of the University of Arizona. And so I am thankful that I was invited to participate in the ceremony.
And the next event we attended was on November 29th with all the regents there, as well as Tucson Mayor Jonathan Rothschild and Governor of Arizona Doug Ducey. We held the installation for President Robbins as the 22nd president of the University of Arizona. It was a ceremony marked in tradition with a ceremonial mace, academic regalia, a chain of office, but President Robbins insisted on a personal touch with a performance from UA Dance Ensemble to Start Me Up and Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones, Jump by Van Halen, and Man in Motion from the film St. Elmo's Fire. In his inaugural remarks, President Robbins talked about the UA's need to meet the challenges presented by the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which will require a clear vision on how to achieve this measure for the university. Governor Ducey remarked, "It's fitting that an internationally recognized cardiac surgeon is the one bringing some new heart and soul to the University of Arizona." So congratulations, President Robbins.
I had the pleasure of attending my first graduation ceremony as a regent for ASU's fall commencement. And besides having my name announced in a completely unrecognizable manner, it was wonderful to hear the incredible stories of ASU students who have persevered so much and done so much within their collegiate years here at ASU. And it made me even more excited, perhaps somewhat nervous, for my pending graduation this May. I'm on the docket. twice. Okay. So we also had the opportunity, myself, Dr. Crow was also there to participate in the Arizona's Future Education Vision Breakfast. December was clearly a very busy month for the Regents, and I had the pleasure of attending this wonderful event. We heard from some very accomplished individuals, such as Dr. Crow, on how we as policymakers can make improvements in our entire education system in the state of Arizona. It was great to hear from individuals who are passionate about ensuring that the future of Arizona is a bright one, and from individuals who understand the importance of a strong educational system.
And then in December, we had two, Regent Shootman, you're featured in this one too.
Thank you. It's lovely.
It's a very good slide.
Yeah, it's mid-laugh. We were joking about something. But this was the Honorary Doctor of Science conferral ceremony for Sid Leach. And then a couple days later, we held the Honorary Doctor of Humane Letters conferral ceremony for two individuals. So Sid Leach was the one who received the science conferral, and the Humane Letters was for Carrie Taylor. Both individuals have given tremendously to the university, and we would not be here without their contributions to the Stewart Observatory and to the Eller College of Management. Next, on December 27th, this week was very busy, with Christmas, bowl games. So one of the bowl games that I got to attend was the UA Foster Farms bowl game. And so I decided to feature this picture in my report because it highlights a great aspect of the bowl game experience in which the players of the teams participate in community service and giving back to the community. And so this was very much appreciated that it's part of the bowl experience. And I encourage, those who do participate in the bowl game, to venture out and give back to the community.
Touching on that, I was also happy to attend my first bowl game as a regent as the Sun Devils took on the North Carolina State. It was fun to see so much Sun Devil pride in El Paso, Texas, and I had the opportunity to engage with some alumni of the university who had driven and flown from all over the state. And it was amazing to see how ASU made such a lasting impact on their lives. And all of them had distinct interests, and they all pursued very different careers, but they were all united by the fact that they were Sun Devils and they cared so much about it. And so it was really cool to see that type of community in a different state. Also, during the month of January, the Regents were able to kick off the new year by attending the Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry's Legislative Forecast Luncheon. This is one of the biggest events to kick off the beginning of Arizona's legislative session. And we had the opportunity to hear from Governor Ducey and our legislative leadership on their priorities and what they would like to accomplish in this next 100-day period, or so we hope. And it was great to hear from our state's policymakers and their priorities.
Earlier this month, I represented the board at the U of A's Regents Professor induction ceremony. And so later this evening, we'll be attending ASU's induction ceremony. And I just wanted to add a note to all those who have received this highest distinction in the past and those who will be conferred later this evening, that this is a great achievement, and that it's often said that a great teacher can inspire hope, ignite the imagination, and instill a love of learning. The same can be said of all those who are honored as Regents professors in the state of Arizona. Then on January 29th, I also represented the board at the University of Arizona Strategic Plan Discussion and Reception event that they held at the Student Union Ballroom. The co-chairs of the UA Strategic Planning Committee, Elliot Chu and Lisa Ordonez, led 500 community leaders in discussions about the future of the university and where stakeholders believe that the university should head in the next 5, 10, and 15 years. It was highly interactive with the use of cell phones. If you look behind Lisa, that was live. We were texting in our thoughts about the big words that jumped out to us about the U of A. As you can see, their community was one of the big things, and we did that for a couple of sessions, and then we also worked on, what we thought the university would look like in 10 to 15 years.
Last night we had the wonderful opportunity to engage with our university student leaders, and as the student governments were giving their updates as to what they were up to, we were really encouraged by their enthusiasm for diversity, inclusivity, and by reducing barriers to education, and that was just a common theme that really surrounded the discussion, so we were really happy to hear that. Our student body presidents gave some really great updates as to what they're up to on their respective campuses, so I won't take the time to discuss that, but for future student leadership dinners, we are really hoping to make the meetings more robust with some takeaway action items that we can work on as student leaders on our campuses.
And the last thing I wanted to touch on was something that I've been working throughout my term as I get near to the end of it. I just wanted to point out something since we've been talking about historical context of where we've come. 1978 was the first time we had a student regent, so 2018 marks the 40th anniversary of student representation on this board. The first student regent for the state of Arizona was Andrew Federhar of the University of Arizona. Myself, I'm the 41st, Andrea is the 42nd, and we hope to soon welcome the 43rd, who will be coming from NAU. And so we've been working with board staff, Regent DeGravina, and former student regents on collaborating on best practices for the office of the student regent. You know, 40 years is a long time, and the office has certainly evolved in that time, and we have to make certain changes and reforms and, you know, implement some best practices to meet the challenges of the 21st century. And what does that look like in terms of student advocacy and student representation on the Board of Regents? And so we look forward in the coming months, the next board meeting in April and in June to roll out more updates on the reforms that we intend to make for the office of the student regent moving forward. And with that, Mr. Chair, are there any questions?
Thank you. Any questions or comments? I just want to commend both of our student regents. They presented a very comprehensive, I wouldn't call it a reform package, but a very comprehensive package to take the student regent position to a new level. And you can already see that they're involved in so many things, and I think they plan to increase that involvement, especially with the students. And it's critical as we go forward when we're talking about tuition or campus climate or campus safety, that they are at the forefront of representing the students. So you're doing a tremendous job, and so I want to thank both of you. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, now that Regent Carriega did the math, I then went and did the math on when I was student body president. It was 30 years ago this year at ASU, and I can tell you and I can attest firsthand that the quality of the student regents has dramatically improved.
Well, thank you, and you know it's an evolving process, 40 years in the making, and Arizona is truly a model for student involvement at this level.
Thank you. And does anybody know how many other boards of regents throughout the nation do they have student representation on the boards? Or?
Not all of them and not many, but...
Yeah, but that is an excellent question, and we'll get back to you at our next report, so thank you.
Political in your response.
Wisconsin does.
Mr. Chairman, the other thing I think Regent Carriaga could answer is how many are voting, because I think many more have student representatives, but non-voting student representatives, which adds to the uniqueness
Correct.
of the position that we have on
Yes,
the state of Arizona.
and here in Arizona, originally it was a non-voting position that would rotate on an annual basis. So it started at U of A, then we had ASU student, and then the NAU, and that's how the rotation began. But it wasn't until the 1989-1990 cycle in which student regents received the vote in Arizona. And then in 2000 when the non-voting student regent was added, and that's why we have 42 student regents throughout the course of these past 40 years. But that would also be something very much to look into, but not all states have their student representatives on the board or student trustees are granted the voting rights as they are here in Arizona. So we're very forward in that capacity and very grateful for this opportunity.
Okay, Dr. Lynn Nadell, faculty.
Thank you, Chairman Ridenour. And as usual, I'm going to be reporting sort of a consensus report from the three universities, but I'm going to go a bit off script to congratulate Regent Cariaga and Regent de Gravina for 40 years of service, not your years of service, but 40 years of having a student regent, 28 years of having a voting regent, and also mention that this is the 0th year of a faculty regent. And a 0th year of having a voting faculty regent. So I would merely point out that we might want to think about the fact that while we have student regents, we don't have faculty regent on the board, and that this is something perhaps the board would want to consider going forward. That was not in the report. My apologies to my colleagues for having put that in, but it's in response to what I think is a very good point that you made. So this is the actual report. We've seen a recent upsurge of attempts to derail faculty teaching in the classroom. I think President Klein referred to this a little bit, by individuals who disagree with what's being said or how it's being said. These attempts can disrupt teaching in significant ways. We need clear guidelines for how to ensure students and faculty can pursue intellectual inquiry as guided by disciplinary norms. We feel that a revision of the current ABOR academic freedom policy would be extremely helpful in this regard, because it is actually quite underspecifies what needs to be done in this area. We cannot serve our students and contribute to student success if we feel the need to self-censor. Faculty need assurance that we can teach to our disciplines without fear of harassment and reprisal. We will shortly be forwarding to ABOR staff a draft statement regarding academic freedom and freedom of speech, which are not the same thing. That we would like to see adopted as ABOR policy, which really only addresses it in current form, that it really only addresses freedom of speech, doesn't address academic freedom in any specific way. We strongly affirm our support for pay equity and for thorough study of pay inequity at our three institutions. Equity concerns should be dealt with quickly and professionally, and no one should be fearful of coming forward. We support the principle that ABOR and ABOR alone should be able to set policy regarding weapons on campus, so we appreciate the fact that you've made some changes in this regard. Safety on campus is a primary concern, but in general, we believe that more weapons do not make safer students, in general. Given the vagueness of House Bill 2172, we encourage regents to speak out about its problems. Now, I don't know if that's a bit of a moot point at this stage. We would be eager to collaborate with ABOR in working to change public attitudes about the purpose and value of higher education. I don't think there's anything that disturbs faculty quite as much as the fact that the public seems to have we would consider an inaccurate and inappropriate view of the value and purpose of higher education. We would like to be of some help in changing that and helping the board work on that issue of how the public views higher education. And in a related context, not unrelated perhaps to this issue, all three campuses are engaged in reviewing general education, and the faculty on all campuses are doing this, and I believe the process is going to be more or less thorough in the different campuses, but we all understand the need to sort of rethink general education at this point, and we're all pretty excited and engaged in how we might do that. At the U of A, it's very much rolled into the strategic plan process. I don't know quite how it's playing out on the other campuses, but I do know that all three campuses are thinking hard about the issue of general education, and the faculty are going to be in the trenches on that one going forward. And with that, I'll conclude my report. Thank you. Thank the regents for the attention.
Any questions or comments? Regent Penley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really, really pleased, Professor Nadell, that all three campuses are now working on general education and really looking at the extent to which the general education represents their distinctive aspects of their institution. Particularly at the University of Arizona, this comes at a time as the institution is looking at its own strategic planning efforts for the point that Regent Cariaga made a few moments ago. So I think it works very well. I want to thank President Klein and the staff at our office for really raising these issues this year. I think sometimes as we've talked about general education, we've had a set of general questions and answers, and sometimes it seemed perhaps less pointed than we might wish. I don't think that's a real problem so long as we have really engendered further look by the faculty at these issues. then I think we can call that a success so far this year. So thank you, President Klein. Thank you, Professor Nadell, for what you've done to really lead this effort.
Well, I haven't done very much, but thank you for the comments, and I think the faculty are pretty excited about this. I can again speak predominantly for the U of A, but the idea that we could really rethink from a kind of a clean piece of paper just exactly what Gen Ed should be about and how it can better serve students going into the 21st century, that's a pretty exciting prospect for faculty. They can get into that. They can sink their teeth into that concept. So I think we can do something interesting going forward here.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
So thank everyone. So that concludes today's portion of the public meeting. And the board will now reconvene in executive session in the Gold Room. We're scheduled to go to about 4 o'clock. Then we have the Regents Professor induction ceremony at 5 o'clock at the ASU Student Pavilion. Tomorrow there's a 7:45 faculty breakfast at the University Club. And then we're going to meet as a board at the Fulton Center for the OFR presentation by ASU. So tomorrow we'll be parking at the Fulton Center. The University Club is right across the street for the faculty breakfast, and we're looking forward to the presentation tomorrow by ASU. So thank you.
I'm sure we'll have it. Not bad. I had to very legislative.